Hey, how you doing? This is RJ. So today I'm going to talk about the next step in progressive entertainment because a lot of people are looking at the progressive entertainment systems, no matter what you're looking at, whether it be comics or video games or tabletop games or television or movies. They're looking at what is going on within these industries or sub-industries of entertainment, seeing how poorly that these quote-unquote progressive entertainment offerings are doing and the industries as a whole are doing. They're seeing the massive amounts of money that they are losing and thinking to themselves, now they're going to turn around. Now things are going to get back to sanity, or someone at the top is going to force them to get back to sanity. And I'm here to say, I'm sorry, but no, that's not going to happen. These people are going to drive everything off a cliff, taking everyone with them, kicking and screaming if necessary, even to their own demise, to their own detriment. So yes, there is a movement forward. They are progressive. They must progress. They will never go backward. And although I'm going to concentrate mostly on the comic industry when I'm talking about this for today, it's because the comic industry is at the unfortunate forefront of this entire push. Because guess what? Now, if you haven't heard, professionals in the comic industry now drive others in their industry who don't play by the rules. They drive them to, and I'm going to be using a lot of euphemisms for this video. You'll see obviously why. But they drive people to take their lives in their own hands and then to simply end it. This is what is going on in the comic industry. They are at the forefront of this quote-unquote progressive machine. They are the craziest of the crazies, and they are going to be a warning signal to everyone else to look for what is going to happen in the type of entertainment that you love. And very briefly, talking about entertainment that you might love, I have two links in the description and the pinned comment for my 3 graphic novels. You're looking at some of the art for those graphic novels in the background. They are put together as best as possible according to the old way of making comics, according to the way wherein you listen to your audience, you give them a good story, you give them excitement, adventure, fun, beautiful art, beautiful women. All that kind of stuff. So if any of that sounds or looks appealing to you at all, click on one of those links in the description and the pinned comment and go on over and take a look at my graphic novels and see if they're for you. And yes, I particularly put that into this video, this specific video. Why? Because it's very much a part of what I'm going to be talking about. The creation of new independent forms of entertainment. But we're not going to talk about that right at the moment. Let's get back to the meat of the entire thing before we get there. So, I think the reason why most people are getting the signals wrong from the entertainment industries is because they don't understand some of the basic premises by which these quote-unquote progressive people proceed upon. So let's start there and just go over, according to some things that just recently happened, what the basic premises of these people, these quote-unquote progressive people, is and how their actions follow from those. And these are going to be fairly odd, but they do explain the basic premises. So premise number 1, once these quote-unquote progressive people get into the industry, you can't get rid of them. They are a cancer. A lot of people are looking at these quote-unquote progressive creators and these progressive systems of entertainment and saying, well, they're dying now. They're being hurt now. Obviously, they're going to turn around. No, they're not. They're a cancer in a healthy body. A cancer doesn't care if the body that it is within is going to die. It's going to multiply and multiply until it kills it. That is what these people are. And just like a cancer, if there's any little bit of it left within the body, it is going to rapidly multiply again and again and again until it kills its host. These people, they are a cancer. And their intention, whether they know it or not, whether they purposefully are pointing themselves in this direction or not, their end goal, according to their ideology, is the destruction of the type of entertainment system within which they reside. These people are not within, again, let's say the comic industry, because they love comics. They're there because they hate comics. Again, same with video games, tabletop games, television, movies, doesn't matter what. These people are creating comics, not because they love comics, but because they hate them. Comics are, as far as they're concerned, part of the, as they would call it, cis white male patriarchy, and simply must be destroyed. Now, it's great in their minds that they control it, at least for a little while, and we'll get back to that. But really, there is no saving it in their mind. They know that the end point of it is its destruction. Because again, they are cancer. And again, they don't care. Quite the opposite. They're there because they hate the thing within which they work. So, in the end, they want it to die. Secondly, somebody might be saying, well, then we have to get these people out of the industry completely. And that, I'm sorry to say, is an impossibility. As I said, these people are a cancer. As long as one of them remains, they're going to multiply until the sickness returns and they kill the host within which they reside. And these industries simply will not get rid of all of those people. They just will not. And the example of this from the last week, the highest example that I can come up with, is the fact that we've just learned from articles done, I think within the last week, couple of weeks, that the press secretary for the White House, whose name is, I think, Karine Jean-Pierre, she is a diversity hire all the way through. You know, the normal, female, black, sexual deviant, all that kind of stuff. Well, again, we have now learned from some documents that the White House was really concerned that she was extremely poor at her job and was actually making the president look bad. So they asked her to step down. They basically said to her, I think it's time for you to move on. And she said no. And it appears this was a little while ago that they asked her to do this. And the point being that when they asked her to step down and she said no, there was absolutely nothing that they could do about this. Why? Because if they actually fired her, then they would be put in an untenable position. And they simply cannot have that. Because here's the thing. The reason why they hired these people, these diversity hires to begin with, is because they're weak people. They're weak people with weak minds and weak wills who bend to this quote-unquote progressive ideology. And as weak people with weak minds, they're not ready to take on any suffering because of their actions. So they can't admit that they made a mistake and then try to rectify the mistake, especially because, as I have noted many times on my channel, the culture that they want to build is based upon shame, not guilt. Guilt is the way that Christianity works, wherein you internalize the rule and point your finger at yourself and say, I did something wrong. No. They want a shame culture. A shame culture is one where someone points the finger at you and brings you down. So they built a shame culture, and if they were to have the fortitude to fire these people, then they would be shamed, and they simply cannot handle that. Because, again, they're weak people. And that's just for one individual. One individual, by the way, that is affecting the governance of the entire country. And they can't do it. Now apply that to an industry where these people are all over the place, where they are 99% of the people running the thing. Do you think they have the moral fortitude to get rid of every last one of them? No, absolutely not. And again, as long as one remains, that cancer will regrow. Number 2, and this is also something I've been harping about on my channel since it began 6 years ago. So if you want some examples of this, go back and listen to my analysis of podcasts from Marvel. But number 2 is that many people think that these quote-unquote progressive creators, put that in quotes as well, are a bunch of moral nags. Let's just look at the situation of Stellar Blade right now. It is a video game coming out of Japan, if you're not up on all of this. And the point being that its main protagonist, if I'm correct, is a female, a very, very attractive female, shapely, kind of female that you would see in old entertainment. Now, the quote-unquote progressive entertainment system, especially those people in the gaming community that control the websites and promotion and all of that, we're trying to get rid of Stellar Blade. Why? Because of this beautiful woman. Saying things like, the people who created this have absolutely no idea what a woman looks like. And then the people who created it answered that by showing them the woman. I believe she's the wife of one of the programmers, showing this woman as she was being used to screen capture her movements. And the entire look of this character is based upon her. But anyway, the point is that over the last week, one of these gaming journalists came out and basically said, I don't understand where these people on the internet are getting the idea that I don't like the female form, that I don't like beautiful women, because I am the champion for one of the most beautiful women within games. The character is Aphrodite, and in the promotional material, she's, well, not wearing any clothes, all of this kind of stuff. And people on the internet are saying, wait a second. You're trying to get rid of Stellar Blade because of the way that she looks, and yet you're promoting this other game and have promoted this other game with this woman, who's a naked woman, it's Aphrodite. Isn't that hypocritical? Well, no, it isn't hypocritical, and I think the only ones who really hit the nail on the head with the coverage of this entire thing was Bounding into Comics. They didn't need to take so long to get to the point, but they hit the nail straight on the head. The point of this entire thing is that these people, these quote unquote progressive journalists and developers and creators, again in quotes, to them, it's all about power. Now, Bounding into Comics didn't get into this part, I'll get into it, but this is why they're not moral nags. This is why equating them to the early 80s conservative movements, who were, to some extent, moral nags, is a false equivalency. Why? Because these people, these quote-unquote progressive people, they're not moral at all. They have no morals, and therefore they're not moral nags. Morality necessitates that you have some higher power that is handing you down morality. You're looking at something bigger than yourself, be it God or reality, and whatever that highest thing is for them is saying you need to act in a certain way. This is where morality comes from. But these people, these quote unquote progressive people, they don't have morality because their greatest good is not something moral at all. Because again, the higher power can hand down morality because the higher power contains within it morality. Their higher power has no morality contained within it whatsoever because their highest power is power itself. And power itself is not a moral thing. So when I hear people complain about Stellar Blade and say these quote-unquote progressive people within the entertainment systems are a bunch of moral nags, I just hear the fact that these people, although rightly incensed, are completely missing the point. They're not moral nags. They have absolutely no qualms and no morals about being immoral. So they're not trying to promote some moral system. They're simply trying to gain power. And that's why they can go ahead and lie and cheat and steal and be hypocritical in order to get what they want. Again, they're able to do anything immoral that they want in order to get what they want because their end goal is power, not something that is moral. So please, stop calling them moral nags. And that's the point with Stellar Blade and this other video. That's why this gaming journalist promotes Aphrodite in this game, but not the woman from Stellar Blade. Why? Because they don't have control. They don't have power over that gaming entity that created Stellar Blade. They have control over the one which has Aphrodite in it. Therefore, that's okay. Having a naked woman there who's shapely, that's fine. Why? They have control over it. They have power over it. They don't have power over Stellar Blade, and they need power over Stellar Blade, and that's why they're concocting this whole system that's going to attack Stellar Blade to try to cancel it. They need power over it. It's all about power. Never forget that. Always keep that in your mind. The only reason these people act is to increase their power. Now, let's get into the sad part of this entire thing. It is the early demise of Ed Piskor. Now, I told people on my live streams that I was going to cover this, but I want to give you some information right up at the beginning. Now, I don't know Ed Piskor at all. I'm not familiar with really much of his work at all. The only information that I have about Ed Piskor is listening to his YouTube channel with Jim Rugg, I do believe. It's called Cartoonist Kayfabe. So hopefully I'm coming at this from a disimpassioned place. But if I get any of this information wrong, please correct me in the comment. Also, I will be putting up in the background a bunch of tweets from, well, basically the people who drove Ed Piskor to an early end. So for those of you who do not know, Ed Piskor is a cartoonist. He created comics. And the very briefest analysis of any of that is the fact that his most notable works were independent works, works outside of the main system of entertainment for comics. It was long enough ago so that this quote-unquote progressive system of torture was nowhere to be seen, at the very least only on the horizon. And a situation developed over the last couple of months where one woman stepped forward basically saying that Ed Piskor made her feel uncomfortable. Some people within the comic industry who have, it seems, always had it out for Ed, started to use this as leverage to simply destroy his life. Basically hinting at things by calling him nicknames like Ped Piskor. As far as I can tell, making up extra things to make it sound worse and worse, even when the woman who made the initial accusations came forward and said, oh, no, he never actually did anything to me. He simply made me feel uncomfortable. And as many have pointed out, he probably made her feel uncomfortable because it's a generational difference. Being a fella from the 90s who basically treated life as a Star Trek holodeck wherein he was a 1930s black gangster, he obviously used, as they say, anachronistic language, mannerisms, etc. And of course, the touchy-feely, no one can hurt my feelings generation of today took his actions to be, well, off-putting to say the least. And again, I'm not entirely sure of exactly, because I haven't gone through all of the material, what these people are claiming that he did, but there is no evidence for the accusations levied against him as Ed Piskor by quote-unquote professionals within the comic industry. But the point is that they simply piled on with these accusations and with demands that Ed bend the knee, going even so far as to take his Comics Kayfabe, their YouTube channel, partner and tell him that, if you keep standing up for him, you're going to be caught in this entire thing as well. And oh, by the way, this fella, Jim Rugg, the main way he provides for his family is he's a teacher. So basically, they forced him to denounce Ed or they were going to destroy his life. And in the end, what happened to poor Ed was that Ed decided that the pain of living was just too much for him. He decided to end his existence on this plane, again, being euphemistic because of our platform here, and then left a note saying, these are the people that drove me to this end. And they are the people within the comic industry. He literally calls them his murderers. Now, that's the situation as bare bones as possible of what happened to poor Ed Piskor. And I'm not here to discuss Ed himself. I'm here to discuss the very fact of his death, because the very fact of his death, I think, is a turning point within the history of comics and really within the history of entertainment, because again, the crazy comes out most within the comic book system, but you're going to see this in every other entertainment system in some way. You have these people, these quote-unquote progressive people who are in control of this small little entertainment system, and they know, and it has been proven, and everyone around them knows that they're destroying what they're actually working on. And instead of, let's say, buckling down and beginning to make a good product so that they can create something that sells, so that the company can continue to exist, so they can have a job, so that they can feed themselves, what do they intend to do? They don't intend to do that, any of that. What they intend to do is to torture the people within their own system so that they have more power and control. Now again, the question becomes, why in the world would they do this? And a lot of people are trying to answer that question by saying, well, they're just horrible people. Well, they're just mean and nasty people. They're evil, vicious people. That's why they do it. But I'm, again, here to say, all of that is window dressing. All of that is a symptom of this disease. Because you got to remember, once again, these people don't have any moral stake in this whatsoever. And that includes a moral stake that is negatively moral, that is to say, viciousness. Yes, they're mean and nasty and wicked people who want to destroy others to watch things burn, but again, those are all symptoms. We have to look at the reason, which is the cause of why A, they would act this way, and B, after they had done this, and that leftover note from Ed Piskor says, the reason I ended everything was because of these people, they have murdered me. What did the industry itself do? Well, it coddled his murderers, basically telling them, well, no, you didn't do anything wrong. Obviously, you're a good person. All of this stuff out there on the internet, that's completely wrong. Even though it can be documented that they basically drove poor Ed to his end. And again, some of that's in the background showing you tweets from these people. No. They're still listing themselves as in the right. But again, on that front too, as well, it's not time to point fingers at them and say, look how maniacally evil these people are. It's the time to ask the question, why? Why would they do this? And the answer to the question of why is because this is the next step forward within your quote-unquote progressive entertainment. This is how they progress within their entertainment, because even though the body is starting to die, they don't care. This cancer will continue to metastasize. It will continue to grow. It will continue to try and drive out anything else that has power within even close earshot to it. And this is an example of the next step within quote-unquote progressive entertainment. Poor Ed was simply the recipient of this. And what do I mean by all of that? Well, let's analyze it just for a second. The point is that Ed, by the way, was pretty much apolitical. He wasn't on the side of these quote-unquote progressive people. He wanted to keep his work apolitical. And at the same time, he wasn't with us. He wasn't with Comicsgate. If people came into his space and said this and that about Comicsgate, he had no qualms about deleting comments, about ejecting people. He wanted to be apolitical. That's his first mistake, according to these quote-unquote progressive people. Because here's the thing. The quote-unquote progressive entertainment system, again, let's look at comics. For comics, these progressives control 99.99% of everything that's going to come out within your comic shop. They are in complete control of the entire thing right now. And any small little bit, that 0.01, which is basically, for me, Alterna Comics, yeah, they can squash that anytime they want. And for us, people like me, who make independent comics, yeah, they can squash us anytime they want. That's what they feel. And that's what they'll eventually get around to. But that's a later step. The step right now, after their complete and utter control of the comic system, is to move on not to their opponents, but to the people who are in the middle. The people who claim to be apolitical. Especially the people who they don't have real control over. And Ed Piskor was one of those people. Again, Ed Piskor made his name not through what you would normally think as the channels of working in comic books. He didn't work for the big two. He was pretty much independent, so they didn't have those levers of control over him. But here's the real point of the entire thing. There's an intersection of several factors that made them go after Ed. Number one, as I said, he was apolitical. Number two, they didn't have any real control over him. But number three is really the crux of the entire thing. Number three is the fact that Ed had a YouTube channel called Cartoonist Kayfabe. And on that YouTube channel, he was apolitical, not someone that they controlled, and was basically teaching people how the old way of comics were made. How to make comics in the old way. So let's bring up something I bring up all the time. In 2009, Joe Quesada at Marvel Comics went to the doorstep of a woman who had really no experience making comics. Her name was Sana Amanat. He invited her to come and work for Marvel with the intention of her eventually taking control of, as she says, and again, words from her mouth, several things, one of which included making comics in an entirely new way. Since 2009, they have instituted that new way of making comics. And as I said, they control now 99.99% of all those comics that go on the comic book shop shelf. And it is according to the new way of making comics. So again, remember that these people hate comic books. They hate any entertainment that they work on. The point is to destroy it. What they're doing is for the eventual destruction of it. So they have done their job so far. But one of the points of their job is that they need to ensure that no one can ever go back. That is one of the philosophical points of progressivism that I go on about, which I won't in this video, but I have in other videos. There is no going back for these people. They want to ensure that there is absolutely no way anyone can ever go back to making good comics. That is to say, can use the old methods of making comics. Again, because it's part of the straight white male patriarchy, it is something that needs to be completely obliterated. So they need to cut off any connection to the past. And they've done so far within what they control, but they need to expand that so no one can teach this method. Because in their minds, that will ensure the death of this kind of entertainment, not only right now, but for all time to come. And here's the thing. Most of the older comic pros are just that, older comic pros. Sure, you get Jim Shooter doing a lecture every once in a while. People like that who, in some small way, help others make comics in an older way. But for most of the older comic pros, they've left the comic industry, they've been driven out in one way or another, and they have no real allegiance, especially if it's going to cause them significant harm. They have no real allegiance, no real reason to teach a younger generation how to make comics in the old way. So basically, long story short, is that the older comic pros are pretty much irrelevant because A, they're able to control most of them, and the ones that they don't control will be dead soon, so what does it matter? Also, the main systems by which they recruit people into making comic books now, well, they have control over them. For example, the School of Visual Arts, which is most notably known for teaching the art and concepts of Will Eisner, the person who basically the Oscars of comics are named after. Well, they have a control over that. I've done videos about it, not very many, but Klaus Janson is a heavy progressive. He controls much of the school, or at the very least influences what it does. He actually goes to Marvel Comics every year, is still doing it now, and teaches them how to make comics. But again, that system's all in control. And oh, by the way, one of the things I ranted about on one of my live streams is they have control over Will Eisner's books as well. Basically, the new versions of Will Eisner's books have been, with the blessings of his estate, as far as I'm concerned, been reformatted and edited for content C, been censored. And they're going to continue to do this with his books over and over again. They say in the forward of it, well, he used this, as Ed Piskor did, anachronistic language and examples. So we got rid of some of that. We replaced it with other things, some of which is completely new, by the way. And that's going to be something they're going to continue to do over and over again. So if you want any real copy of Will Eisner's actual works, go and find a copy of it on the internet, an old copy. Why? Because these quote-unquote progressive people have control over this system now. And again, talking to people like the creator of Fiendish, Rene, who went through a university system for sequential art and did work at Marvel for a short time. It's her estimation that, yeah, when she was in art school, it wasn't like this. These quote-unquote progressives didn't have control over the entire system, but she's looking at the system now and saying, yeah, they have control over it. And I should, I guess, throw this in just to be thorough. I'm sure someone's thinking in the back of their head, oh, it doesn't matter. We have manga. We have these people creating manga. It has merit. There's good storytelling there. But here's my 2 cents on that entire thing. Yes, I understand that Japan is no longer an isolationist country as concerns economy, as concerns its borders, but it is still an isolationist country as concerns its ideas. That is to say, 99% of the people, basically, who live in Japan are Japanese. They concern themselves only with what is Japanese. Sure, they might have spectacularly good ways of making comics, of making manga. They might even write a book here or there about it, but they don't care to teach it to anyone who is not Japanese. Again, correct me if I'm wrong if you want in the comments. But first of all, in order to really go down that path, you would have to learn Japanese, which is hard enough in itself. Why? Because they're used to speaking to Japanese people. It's very, very inflection based because they don't care about outsiders and their ability to understand it. And it's the same with comics. Even if you get over that language hurdle, again, they don't care to teach you how they do it. So I don't see that as being any real help in continuing to keep alive this system of merit, nor can we go to Europe. I just talked to, last Wednesday on my live stream, a comic creator from Europe. He's saying, yeah, we have the same problems as North America. It's just in a different fashion. Maybe we could go to South America, but again, they do have similar type problems. So there's nowhere to turn. And quite simply, if you're interested in making American comics the American comic way, there is no place to turn to, because their intent is now to destroy the ability of that knowledge to be carried forward. And Ed Piskor, unfortunately, was in the crosshairs of this entire thing. Why? Because he did work in that old system. He did understand how older comics were made, but he was young enough so that he could teach others how to do so. And again, he was apolitical and was not under the thumb of these quote-unquote progressive systems. They did not have power over him, so all of these things intersected to put a crosshairs right on his forehead, and that's why they went after Ed. And that's why when these people literally drove Ed Piskor into his grave, they're being coddled and told that they did nothing wrong, even going so far as to tout themselves that they still did something right. And again, gotta remember, be dispassionate here. Don't look at that and say, these people are completely evil. We have to condemn them because they're amoral. No, we have to condemn them because they care nothing about morality. Your feelings about this are going to cloud the entire thing. Look at the bigger picture of why they're doing it. It's because of power. And I'm sorry, but no one, as far as I can see, is covering this entire thing in this fashion of why they're going after him without putting this emotional layer on it. If someone is, let me know. I'd like to listen to their stuff. Put it in the comments. But this is the real reason, and you got to watch out for this real reason. And again, I don't think anybody in the higher ups of Comicsgate are going to listen to my reason. Nobody listens to me. That's not the way Comicsgate works. It's actually pretty cliquey. The people at the top are the people at the top, and they only listen to the people at the top. And again, saying this as disimpassioned as possible. So no, this video of mine is not going to cause some new revelation within the minds of Ethan Van Sciver or John Malin or Richard Meyer or Eric July, if you want to throw him on the pile as well. I'm sure they're great guys and they're doing their part to advance actually making good comics. But the point is, they don't see this as the next step within making comics within the quote-unquote progressive comic industry, because they're looking at the comic industry and saying, well, it's going to collapse. Richard just did a video, I think a couple of days ago, saying, yeah, the whole thing is going to turn around probably within the next year. I don't think so. These people are going to be here 5-10 years minimum. Why? Again, because the people in control can't get rid of them. Now, if Richard's right and I'm wrong, I will happily eat humble pie. I want to be wrong about this entire thing. I really don't think I am. And that's the most dangerous part of this entire thing, that no one else is seemingly talking about this. Again, if someone is, put it in the comments. They're not talking about the fact that these quote-unquote progressives, even though they're hurting, even though they're bleeding out, they're still, as a cancer, continuing to push forward, to destroy the host within which they reside, because they hate the thing within which they reside. They want it dead, and not only want it dead, but that control and power that they must have over it must also be control and power over anybody's connection to the past of this thing, so that no one can ever make comics or entertainment, again, because this will metastasize to other forms of entertainment as well, if it already hasn't. They will destroy that connection, that ability to understand and make comics the old way. There is nothing but new comics, according to the new way right now, being produced, except for very small pockets. So, again, how these quote-unquote progressives progress, their next step is to obliterate the connections to the past, and they're starting with the people that are closest to them, that is to say, the centrists who want to be apolitical. But make no bones about it, they're coming for us. You might say, well, they've been coming for us for a long time. No, this is an entirely different way. And quite honestly, I don't know why Richard doesn't understand this. He understands that, yes, they built a Death Star. Obviously, when they were building it, they knew, if you're building a Death Star, that it's for destruction. It is to kill. So he sees the fact that the people around this destructive system sat there and said nothing, but he doesn't quite see the fact that this Death Star will continue to obliterate everything in its path. There is no turning around. There is no turning it into anything else. And I know there are some people out there going, oh, good heavens, RJ, you're such a downer. Why do I even listen to your videos? Is there any bit of silver lining in this entire thing? Well, yes, there is. The silver lining is, if you do as I have just done, analyze in a disimpassioned way why they are doing this, you're able to see the exact chink in their armor, which will allow the creation of good entertainment. For me, that's good American comic books to continue. The reason why they're doing this, the reason why they have to destroy any connection to the past by destroying any individuals that A, have knowledge of how to make comics the old way, and B, are young enough to teach it to others, the reason they have to go after these individuals in their minds is because they don't believe in truth. Now, how does that track? Well, it tracks in the following way. To them, there is no truth. And if there is no truth, everything is passed down through experience. That's why they must drive people, if they don't have control over them, into an early grave. Because they can't hand down that experience to others, that is the forbidden knowledge that they will not allow to continue. And again, make no mistake about it, they will do this again and again and again until they have complete control, because Ed was just a warning to the others. Don't do this or we will drive you into an early grave. And if someone challenges that, guess what they're going to do to them. But the point is that they see this entire thing, they see knowledge being passed down as experience and only as experience, and this is a result of their ideological bent of no belief in truth. It is a belief which is contrary to reason and reality. There's a very simple way to disprove it. Obviously, it's when a person says there is no such thing as truth. Well, you just look at them and say, well, you're stating that as if it's true. So either it's true and there is truth, or it isn't true and there is truth. So let's stop with this nonsense and get down to the work of finding out what truth actually is. And that's the point. Truth exists. This is part and parcel of the entire reason for the existence of my YouTube channel. I talk about heroic ideals according to the virtues that inspire those ideals. These all come from a system of the true, the good, and the beautiful. But that's the point. The truth exists. We might argue about how it exists, where it comes from, all that kind of stuff, but there is truth. And if there is truth, then I can look at these older things like books, lectures, art, everything else that has gone into the making of American comic books in the old system. I am able to see how the people who made it put truth down on the page, and since they had a connection to truth and I have a connection to truth because we both live in reality, I can then extract and understand how the old system of comic making actually works, the old system of entertainment actually works, and I can figure it out for myself. Is it going to take me a lot longer than learning from experience? Yes. Am I going to make a lot more mistakes than learning from someone who has experience? Yes. But the point is, I can do it. But I really think the first step in actually doing this for me or anyone else is, first of all, going back to those heroic ideals that I always talk about, is to use right reason and understand A, why these quote-unquote progressive people are doing what they're doing, B, exactly what they're doing as worshipers of power, C, understanding that they will never stop until everything is destroyed, and D, employing the virtue of fortitude and realizing that you are going to, if you go down this path of making things the old way, you're going to be assaulted by the slings and arrows of progressivism from every side, and it is only going to increase in intensity. And what does all that mean? Well, fortunately, it means that if you can do this, if you can channel those heroic ideals, those heroic virtues, in order to suffer those slings and arrows and still come out the other end producing something connected to the true, the good, and the beautiful, what you're going to produce is most probably going to be not only inspirationally heroic to your audience, because you are living those heroic ideals in the making, but also is going to connect to them in the same way you needed to connect to your sources of information, and thus create something true, good, and beautiful. So, if I've given you anything new to think about, hit like, hit the shield in the lower right-hand corner of your screen to subscribe, and don't forget, there are 2 links in the description and the pinned comment for my 3 graphic novels, 2 superhero graphic novels, and 1 return to form for low fantasy, sword and sorcery, all based upon the heroic ideal, the traditional heroic ideal, and the old, tried, tested, and true way of making comics. So if any of that sounds or looks appealing to you at all, click on those links in the description and go on over and get yourself a copy of one of my graphic novels today. Help build this true, good, and beautiful system that we want to see. All right, I'll leave it there. I'll see you later. Bye.